Welcome to Mindfulness Stories. Sit back, relax, and get comfortable, because tonight's stories are gentle journeys for sleep, peace, letting go, and calming the mind after a long day. And as these magical stories slowly unfold, you may notice your body becoming softer, your breathing becoming slower, and your mind becoming quieter and quieter. Our first story begins far beyond the mountains, in a hidden valley where the stars seemed brighter than anywhere else in the world. In that peaceful valley lived a young girl named Alara. Every night before sleep, Alara climbed a small hill beside her village to watch the stars. She loved the silence of nighttime, the cool breeze, the glowing moon, the gentle sound of crickets singing beneath the sky. But lately, Alara's mind had become heavy. Too many thoughts, too many worries, too many emotions she did not fully understand. And even when her body felt tired, her mind stayed awake thinking endlessly. While sitting beneath the stars, Alara noticed something unusual, a tiny floating light drifting slowly through the air. At first, she thought it was a firefly, but as the glowing light moved closer, she realized it was much stranger than that. The light shimmered softly like moonlight dancing on water. Then gently, it floated toward the forest. Curious, Alara quietly followed. The deeper she walked into the forest, the quieter the world became. The trees glowed silver beneath the moonlight. Tiny glowing flowers covered the ground, and somewhere in the distance, she could hear peaceful music drifting through the night air. Eventually, Alara reached a hidden clearing where hundreds of floating lights danced slowly beneath the trees. In the center of the clearing sat an old woman wrapped in a cloak filled with tiny glowing stars. The woman smiled warmly. "I was wondering when you would arrive," she said softly. Alara blinked in surprise. "You know me?" The old woman nodded gently. "The stars often guide tired hearts here." Alara sat quietly beside her. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The old woman simply listened to the peaceful sounds of the forest. Finally, Alara whispered, "Why does my mind feel so noisy all the time?" The old woman looked toward the floating lights drifting around them. Then she said softly, "Because many thoughts are like birds. The more we chase them, the louder they become." Alara watched the glowing lights carefully. The woman continued, "But when we sit peacefully, without fighting every thought, the mind slowly becomes calm again." The floating lights drifted slowly through the trees like tiny stars, and for the first time in many days, Alara felt her breathing soften. The old woman smiled gently. "Tonight, you do not need to solve everything. Take a moment to reflect on that, because sometimes peace begins when we stop trying to carry the entire world inside our minds." The woman then reached into her cloak and handed Alara a tiny silver lantern. Inside the lantern floated a soft glowing light. "This lantern is special," the woman whispered. "Whenever your mind feels heavy, imagine placing your worries gently inside the lantern and allowing them to float away for the night." Alara held the lantern carefully. Then slowly, she imagined placing all her worries inside it. Fear, stress, confusion, sadness, pressure. One by one, she let them go. And as she did, the lantern glowed brighter and brighter, until eventually, it floated gently upward into the night sky, alongside the stars. Alara watched peacefully as it disappeared beyond the trees, and for the first time in a long while, her mind felt light again. Now, my friends, our next story begins beside a great sleeping ocean, where a lonely boy named Orion was about to discover something magical hidden beneath the waves. Every evening, Orion walked alone beside the sea, collecting beautiful shells along the shore. The ocean always made him feel peaceful. The sound of waves, the salty breeze, the endless horizon stretching beneath the moonlight. But deep inside, Orion often felt lonely, like nobody truly understood him. One quiet night, while walking beside the water, Orion noticed something glowing beneath the waves. A soft blue light moved slowly beneath the ocean's surface. Curious, he stepped closer. Suddenly, a giant sea turtle emerged peacefully from the water. Its shells shimmered with glowing patterns like tiny stars. The turtle looked ancient and wise. "Why do you carry sadness inside your heart?" the turtle asked gently. Orion looked surprised. "I don't know," he admitted quietly. The turtle smiled softly. "Then come with me." Slowly, the turtle swam along the shore while Orion followed beside the water. Eventually, they reached a hidden cave glowing with blue crystal light. Inside the cave, the walls shimmered like the night sky. Tiny glowing fish drifted peacefully through pools of water. And in the center of the cave stood a perfectly still pool reflecting the moon above. The turtle pointed toward the water. "Look carefully," he whispered. Orion stared into the pool. At first, he only saw his reflection. But slowly, the water began showing memories. Moments where he felt hurt, left out, embarrassed, afraid. The turtle spoke gently. "Sometimes sadness stays trapped inside us because we never allow ourselves to truly feel it." Orion sat silently watching the water. Then slowly, tears rolled softly down his cheeks. Not loud crying, just quiet release. The turtle remained beside him peacefully. No judgment, no rushing, only presence. And after a long while, something surprising happened. The heaviness inside Orion's chest slowly softened. The turtle smiled. Even oceans release storms eventually. Take a moment to think about that. I'm sure your future self will thank you. Before Orion left, the turtle gave him a tiny shell glowing softly blue. Whenever your heart feels heavy, hold this shell close. Breathe slowly. And remember, emotions are waves. They rise, they pass, and calmness always returns again. Now, my friends, our next story begins high above the clouds, where a young boy named Soren discovered a magical train unlike anything he had ever seen before. Soren loved watching trains pass through the snowy mountains near his village. Every night before sleep, he listened carefully to their distant whistles echoing through the valleys. One winter evening, during a gentle snowfall, Soren noticed something unusual: a glowing silver train slowly emerging from the fog. The train shimmered beneath the moonlight like it was made from dreams themselves. Soft golden lights glowed through the windows, and beautiful calming music drifted through the snowy air. The train slowly stopped beside him. Its doors opened quietly. A conductor wearing a midnight blue coat smiled warmly. "Welcome aboard the Midnight Dream Train," he said softly. Soren stepped inside carefully. The train was magical. The ceiling looked like a sky filled with stars. Warm lanterns glowed beside soft velvet seats, and every passenger looked peaceful and sleepy. The conductor sat beside Soren kindly. "This train only appears for tired hearts who need rest." The train slowly began moving through glowing snowy mountains. Outside the windows, beautiful dreamlike worlds drifted past. Floating islands in the sky, forests filled with glowing animals, waterfalls shimmering beneath moonlight, cloud cities glowing softly in the distance. Soren watched peacefully as the train glided silently through the night. Then the conductor handed him a tiny golden ticket. Written across it were the words, "You do not need to carry today forever." Soren stared quietly at the message. The conductor smiled softly. Many people try to fall asleep while still holding every worry from the day inside their mind. But rest begins when we gently let go. Take a moment to reflect on that, because tomorrow becomes much easier when the mind finally allows itself to rest. As the train continued through the night, Soren noticed something incredible. Each time he relaxed more deeply, the outside world became even more magical. The stars glowed brighter, the music became softer, the snowy mountains shimmered peacefully beneath the moonlight. Eventually, the conductor stood beside him once more. "It is almost time to return home," he whispered gently. "But before you leave, remember this: rest is important, peace is important, and your mind deserves kindness too." The train slowly returned to the snowy village. Soren stepped quietly back onto the platform, then watched peacefully as the midnight dream train disappeared silently into the glowing fog. And from that night forward, whenever life felt overwhelming, Soren remembered the magical train, took a slow, deep breath, and allowed himself to rest. Now, my friends, our final story tonight begins deep within a hidden garden where the moonflowers only bloom after midnight. In a tiny cottage beside the garden lived an elderly gardener named Mira. Every night, Mira walked peacefully through the moonflower garden, carrying a small lantern. The flowers glowed silver beneath the stars. Soft wind moved through the trees, and the entire garden felt calm and magical. One evening, a tired young fox wandered into the garden. The fox looked frightened and exhausted. Mira knelt beside him gently. "You look like you've been carrying too much for too long," she whispered kindly. The fox lowered his head sadly. Mira smiled softly, then pointed toward the moonflowers. "Do you know why these flowers only bloom at night?" The fox shook his head. "Because some beautiful things only appear when the world becomes quiet." The fox sat peacefully beside Mira while she watered the glowing flowers. Neither of them spoke for a long while. The garden itself felt peaceful enough. Eventually, the fox curled beside the flowers and slowly fell asleep beneath the stars. And Mira smiled softly, because sometimes healing does not begin through fixing everything. Sometimes healing begins through quietness, rest, presence, and feeling safe enough to finally let go. Now, my friends, before we finish tonight's mindfulness sleep journey, I want you to remember something important. You do not need to solve every problem tonight. You do not need to carry every worry into tomorrow. And you do not need to fight every thought inside your mind. Sometimes peace begins when we gently allow ourselves to rest. So as your body relaxes and your breathing softens, remember tonight's stories. Like Ilara, you can let worries drift away like lanterns into the stars. Like Orion, emotions rise and pass like ocean waves. You deserve rest and kindness too. And like the moonflowers, sometimes the most peaceful moments appear when life finally becomes quiet. Our next story tonight begins far beyond the clouds, on an island that only appears when the moon is full. A young boy named Leo had heard stories about the island his entire life. The Island of Quiet Light. Some people believed it was only a legend. Others believed it appeared only for those who truly needed peace. Every night before sleep, Leo stared out his bedroom window, watching the moon and wondering if the stories were real. Because lately, his mind had felt heavy. Too many thoughts, too much noise, too many worries following him through the day. And even when nighttime arrived, his thoughts still raced endlessly inside his mind. One evening, during the brightest full moon of the year, Leo noticed something unusual outside his window. A tiny, glowing paper boat floating through the sky. A boat drifted slowly through the moonlight, like it was carried by invisible wind. Then gently, it stopped beside his window. Inside the boat was a note written in silver ink. It read, "For tired minds seeking peace, follow the moonlight." Leo blinked in surprise, then quietly climbed from bed and followed the glowing boat outside. The night air felt cool and peaceful. Crickets sang softly in the distance. The glowing boat floated slowly ahead through sleeping straits, across silent hills, and toward the ocean. When Leo reached the shore, he gasped softly. Far out across the sea, a glowing island shimmered beneath the moonlight. Silver trees sparkled like stars. Soft lanterns floated through the air, and peaceful music drifted gently across the waves. A small wooden bridge slowly appeared across the water. Leo stepped carefully onto the bridge. With every step, his thoughts seemed quieter, his breathing slower, his body lighter. When he finally reached the island, an elderly man wearing robes covered in tiny glowing moons greeted him warmly. "Welcome," the man whispered softly. "We have been waiting for you." Leo looked around in amazement. The island felt magical. Tiny glowing birds drifted through the trees, crystal rivers shivered beneath moonlight, and the air itself felt peaceful and calm. The old man smiled gently. "This island appears for those carrying too much inside their mind." Leo lowered his head quietly. "I can't stop thinking sometimes," he admitted softly. The old man nodded kindly. "Then tonight, you will learn something important." The man guided Leo through the glowing forest until they reached a quiet lake, reflecting thousands of stars across its surface. In the center of the lake floated hundreds of lanterns. Each lantern glowed softly with different colors: blue, gold, silver, white. Leo stared in wonder. "What are they?" he whispered. "They are worries people have finally released." Leo sat quietly beside the lake. Then the old man handed him a tiny unlit lantern. "Every person carries invisible weight inside their mind sometimes," he explained softly. "Fear, stress, pressure, sadness, confusion. But many people forget they are allowed to let those feelings go. Take a moment to reflect on that, because sometimes the mind simply needs permission to rest." Leo looked carefully at the lantern in his hands. Then slowly, he whispered his worries into it. Fear of failing, fear of disappointing others, fear about the future, fear of not being good enough. As he spoke, the lantern slowly began glowing brighter and brighter. The old man smiled warmly. "Now, place it gently on the water." Leo carefully placed the lantern onto the lake, and slowly, it drifted peacefully among the others beneath the stars. As he watched it float away, something inside his chest softened, like his mind had finally stopped holding everything so tightly. The old man sat beside him quietly. No rushing, no pressure, only calmness. And eventually, Leo lay peacefully beside the glowing lake, watching lanterns drift across the water beneath the moonlight. For the first time in many nights, his thoughts became still. We hope you enjoyed our stories. Time for sleep now. See you tomorrow night.